Okay. At the beginning of chapter 29, Devahuti, after hearing from Lord Kapiladev the basics of the Sankhya system of philosophy, in previous chapters, Lord Kapiladev described all about details of this material energy and of the spiritual energy. Hearing that inspired Devahuti to inquire, "My dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit, according to the Sankhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. My dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for people in general, the continual process of birth and death. For by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. Please also describe eternal time, which is a representative of your form and by whose influence people in general engage in the performance of pious activities." So today, these lessons, we didn't have a Zoom meeting last week because we were at the Rath Yatra, but basically birth and death will be described in detail as Lord Kapiladev responds to his mother's request. So let us go into the texts and follow those statements by Lord Kapiladev. This is April 2023, lessons 5 and 6, reading from chapter 30, description by Lord Kapiladev of adverse fruitive activities. And here's a review from the last lessons to kind of bring everybody's consciousness up to where we are, as Lord Kapiladev is describing how the time factor influences a man who is maintaining his family and not noticing that the moments are slipping away as he heads towards death. Third canto, chapter 30, texts 10 through 17 as a review. He secures money by committing violence here and there. And although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased. And he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. When he suffers reverses in his occupation, he tries again and again to improve himself. But when he is baffled in all attempts and is ruined, he accepts money from others because of excessive greed. Thus, the unfortunate man, unsuccessful in maintaining his family members, is bereft of all beauty. He always thinks of his failure, grieving very deeply. Seeing him unable to support them, his wife and others do not treat him with the same respect as before, even as miserly farmers do not accord the same treatment to their old and worn-out oxen. The foolish family man does not become averse to family life, although he is maintained by those whom he once maintained. Deformed by the influence of old age, he prepares himself to meet ultimate death. Thus he remains at home, just like a pet dog, and eats whatever is so negligently given to him. Afflicted with many illnesses, such as dyspepsia and loss of appetite, he eats only very small morsels of food, and he becomes an invalid who cannot work anymore. In that diseased condition, one's eyes bulge out due to the pressure of air from within, and his glands become congested with mucus. He has difficulty breathing, and upon exhaling and inhaling, he produces a sound like a rattling within the throat. In this way, he comes under the clutches of death and lies down, surrounded by the lamenting friends and relatives. And although he wants to speak with them, he no longer can, because he is under the control of time. So now we'll enter into lesson 5, Samapriya. Can you please pick someone to read for us? Thank
Yes, before we begin, Hare Krishna, everyone. These are very graphic verses that are about to read and that we read all during the week. In fact, I usually have a review myself of reading all the verses the night before. I actually couldn't read these verses at night. I had to read them this morning. They're very, and I realized that we must take them literally. We will take these, we have to take these literally. It's a very serious thing. So let's continue. And Nanda, would you like to begin for us? Second, come to the Nandaji. Okay, she's probably didn't hear me. So then we'll start now with Manvantara. Nanda, if you hear me, you can go next then. Manvantaraji, you like to read?
Text 18 and 19. Lord Kapila Dev continued, thus the man who engaged with uncontrolled senses in maintaining a family dies in great grief, seeing his relatives crying. He dies most pathetically, in great pain and without consciousness. At death, he sees the messengers of the Lord of Death come before him, their eyes full of wrath, and in great fear, he passes stool and urine. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that at the time of death, one will be absorbed in the thoughts which he cultivated during his lifetime. A person who had no other idea than to properly maintain his family members must have family affairs on his last thoughts. That is the natural sequence for a common man. There are two types of transmigration of a living entity after passing away from the present body. One kind of transmigration is to go to the controller of sinful activities, who is known as Yamaraj, and the other is to go to the higher planets up to Vaikuntha. Here, Lord Kapila describes how a person engaged in activities of sense gratification to maintain a family are treated by the messengers of Yamaraj, called Yamadutas. At the time of death, the Yamadutas become the custodians of those persons who have strongly gratified their senses. They take charge of the dying man and take him to the planet where Yamaraj resides. The conditions there are described in the following verses.
Okay. Do you have any realizations about this introductory verse, what we're about to hear, Manvantara?
No, not particularly. It's just like you described earlier, is graphically alarming.
Yeah, very good. Okay, then let's go on.
Manvantara, in your work, have you seen this kind of a scene where someone's dying and the relatives are crying and the person is so distressed that it's common.
Yes, it is. Right. And it's shocking for everyone there, you know, because everybody's just looking and staring and people are dealing with their own issues, you know. I had one patient whose son came to see him, but he has so many issues, the son, with the relationship, that dynamic. And he was like appalled that death didn't come soon. You know what I mean? Like, why am I here if he's not dying? You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy how it brings out a lot of issues that people are actually dealing with the person that's departing. And just to see him doing that, knowing that this is his dad who has provided for him all his life. You know what I mean? It's just the reversal is astonishing.
Wow. Madhurya Leela, thank you, Manvantara. Thank you.
I also wanted to type in what Manvantara is saying. In hospice, I worked for many years, plus in cancer. We would see patients who are close to the end, and they would start seeing things that most people don't see, like ants or these entities or dogs, and really fearful things. They would actually see them. Of course, we wouldn't see them. and they would hear things too.
Would they
like,
tell you what they're seeing, Medulla Lila? They would say,
Yeah,
"Oh,
like,
oh my God."
yeah, why is that? Why are those ants or why are those roaches crawling on my over there? Can you get them out of here? Why is that man sitting there? Get him out of here.
Wow.
Stuff like that. Yeah, it's very, very vivid. What happens? Mhm.
All on the subtle platform. Very, very dangerous. Very, very horrible. Thank you.
Well, it's
Okay.
enough impetus for us to follow and get out of here.
Right. That's true. Do you want to continue reading, Medulla? There you go.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
So this is Srimad Bhagavatam 3:20, 3:30:20. As a criminal is arrested for punishment by the constables of the state, a person engaged in criminal sense gratification is similarly arrested by the Yamadutas, who bind him by the neck with strong rope and cover his subtle body so that he may undergo severe punishment. Purport. Every living entity is covered by a subtle and gross body. The subtle body is the covering of mind, ego, intelligence, and consciousness. It is said in the scriptures that the constables of Yamaraj cover the subtle body of the culprit and take him to the abode of Yamaraj to be punished in a way that he's able to tolerate. He does not die from this punishment because if he died, who would suffer the punishment? If it is not the business of the constables, it is not the business of the constables of Yamaraj to put one to death. In fact, it is not possible to kill a living entity because factually he is eternal. He simply has to suffer the consequences of his activities of sense gratification. The process of punishment is explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Formerly, the king's men would take a criminal in a boat in the middle of the river. They would dunk him by grasping a bunch of his hair and thrusting him completely underwater. And when he was almost suffocated, the king's constables would take him out of the water and allow him to breathe for some time. And then they would again dunk him in the water to suffocate. This sort of punishment is inflicted upon the forgotten soul by Yamaraj, as will be described in the following verses.
Oof. Well, any more realizations, Medulla?
Well,
this-
it was nice to hear that in one sense that the subtle body's covered. There's some protection of some kind that allows them to go through this hellish area. And later on, I think it says that it only lasts a few moments, but so that was a consolation. It only lasts a few moments, but to the person, it seems like a long, long time that they're traversing through this.
So because time is relative to each individual, it may appear from an objective point of view that it's only a few minutes, but like you're saying, to that person who's suffering the results of an impious or sinful life, it seems like hundreds and thousands of years. So the suffering is actually incalculable. How much people suffer when they go through death, and that's what's happening here. And what they're doing is they're actually, on one hand, making that person suffer for their past sinful activities, as well as simultaneously preparing them for their next body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like that of a hog or a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay. Nanda is actually in New York, so she won't be reading, but she is hearing. Ian, would you like to read?
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, welcome back, and I hope you had a good watch lecture.
Okay, we had a great time. How could
Okay.
you not?
Okay, so 21 to 24, while carried by the constables of Yamaraj, is overwhelmed and trembles in their hands. While passing on the road, he is beaten by dogs. And he can remember the sinful activities of his life. He is thus terribly distressed. Under the scorching sun, the criminal has to pass through roads of hot and sand with forest fires on both sides. He's whipped on the back by the constables because of his inability to walk, and is afflicted by hunger and thirst. But unfortunately, there's no drinking water, no shelter, and no place for rest on the road. While passing on that road to the border, Yamaraj, he falls down in fatigue, and sometimes he becomes unconscious, but is forced to rise again. In this way, he is very quickly brought to the presence of Yamaraj. Thus, he has to pass 99,000 yojanas within 2 or 3 moments, and then he's at once engaged in the torturous punishment which is destined to suffer. Wow. Here, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, the chance for recounting his activities of sense gratification is given by the dogs engaged by Yamaraj. While we live in a gross body, such activities of sense gratification are encouraged even by modern government regulations. In every state all over the world, such activities are encouraged by the government in the form of birth control. Women are supplied pills, and they are allowed to go to the clinical laboratory to get assistance for abortions. This is going on as a result of sense gratification. Actually, sex life is meant for begetting a good child, but because people have no control over the senses and there's no institution, to train them to control the senses, the poor fellows fall victim to the criminal offenses of sense gratification, and they are punished after death, as described in these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Oh, my
Wow.
goodness. So,
Man,
what's your realization of that, Ian?
I can hardly say anything, but it's as mentioned before. I read it some time back, and it was so graphic. When we should maybe I will have a page, that the list of things in front of us every day to see, because you spend all your life engaging in activities, not knowing that you're going to suffer so much, and that is just a prelude to what you're going to suffer. So
Right.
it's
That's it.
yeah,
That's true.
it's harsh.
I was thinking that, when you see the pictures of these people who are actually suffering, even though they've committed such horrible activities, because that painful look is one of humility. They become humble. People become humble when they're suffering. Then your heart goes out for their suffering, and that's it. In Sankirtan, we have to somehow or another, to the best of our ability, help people to become free from this distressed future that is in front of them. Very, very graphic and very intense. Thank you, Ian.
I think Madhurya Leela raised your hand again.
Madhurya, do you have another?
Yeah, I just had a question. I know when the 5th canto came out with all these even detailed description of all of the hellish planets, etc., that a lot of devotees left. But this is in the 3rd canto, and these descriptions are still there. So, do you know what the reaction was at that time, or did the devotees not read it? And
What do you mean they left? Do you think
a lot of people left after they read the 5th canto? They couldn't accept it.
I don't know. I didn't hear of that.
We actually did a research. Samapay and I were speaking this morning, and we were wondering about the concepts of heaven and hell. Everybody knows in Christianity they're there. Caitlin wrote a nice forum describing her upbringing as a Catholic and how she remembers that from her childhood. So we looked up the Jewish religion and the Muslim religion, and they have concepts of it, but it's very vague. Whereas here, Devahuti asked, if you remember the question, she said, please speak about the calamities of birth and death so we can become detached from the activities of this material world. When we hear how horrible it is, it actually inspires detachment.
Hare Krishna. Okay, now this is we'll have a group discussion in a little bit. This is so intense, and we have to, as I said before, we have to take it all literally, and that's the intense part. Okay, Sham Govina, you're back, I see. Would you like to read?
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:30, 25 to 28. He is placed in the midst of burning pieces of wood, and his limbs are set on fire. In some cases, he is made to eat his own flesh or have it eaten by others. His entrails are pulled out by the hounds and vultures of hell, even though he is still alive to see it. And he is subjected to torment by serpents, scorpions, gnats, and other creatures that bite him. Next, his limbs are lopped off and torn asunder by elephants. He is hurled down the hilltops, and he is also held captive either in water or in a cave. Men and women whose lives were built upon indulgence and illicit sex life are put into many kinds of miserable conditions in the hells known as Tamisra, Under Tamisra, and Rava. Purport. When sex life is indulged in for sense gratification, illegally and illicitly, both the man and the woman await severe punishment in this world or after death. In this world also they are punished by virulent diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea. And in the next life, as we see in the passage of Srimad Bhagavatam, they are put into different kinds of hellish conditions to suffer. In Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, illicit sex life is also very much condemned. And it is said that one who produces children by illicit sex life is sent to hell. It is confirmed here in the Bhagavatam that such offenders are put into hellish conditions of life in Tamisra, Under Tamisra, and Rava.
Oh boy. What is your realization on that, Prabhu?
Just like, well, even in this world, like illicit activities bring so much suffering. When there's a broken marriage, so just a mundane broken marriage, all parties suffer, the children, the spouses. So there's suffering in this life. And then for that little bit of pleasure amongst all the suffering, there's suffering on top of it all again, and much more like 100-fold. So I guess my realization is that it looks very miserable without Krishna consciousness, or we hear that it's very miserable without Krishna consciousness, even though we don't believe it.
Good. I thought the same thing. We think that in this life, things are there for our sense gratification. That's why we're born. We're born to enjoy this world. And we're born to accumulate all the wonderful things of this world. And until we meet a pure devotee or have some inquiry about, this doesn't feel right because I enjoy and then I suffer. Why is that? Unless we start asking these questions, it is miserable. It is a miserable condition for us to, even we're having a good time now, if we know this is going to happen in the future due to our simple activities, it really makes you think a few times before you engage like that. Thank you.
Another point is that in the purport, Srila Prabhupada was mentioning that even in this life, there are virulent diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea. So medical science, this is why Srila Prabhupada was so adamant about the demoniac nature of science, is that they come up with medicines and antibiotics which seem to mitigate and stop the suffering. And they think, oh, now I'm not going to get sick. I can use this product or I can use that product and I won't suffer anymore. They don't realize that the suffering is waiting for them at the time of death, which is much worse than a simple disease of an organ or this material body.
Yeah.
That suffering's coming.
Actually, one more thing is when we talk about others, we should actually sometimes use the first person because we're not wearing this material body because of our good behavior. And we should be very, very concerned and frightened about committing sinful activities. And more is coming. So let's continue on.
Ian had a question or comment.
Ian, you have a question?
Yes, and this is mainly for the man. For those what we call venereal diseases, Sometimes they are over-the-counter drugs that they use to treat it without going to the doctor, but they don't know to what extent or far they should treat it because each occurrence has a different kind of treatment. So they have those pills that they use, and each time they get a dose, they call it, they keep taking these pills. So they do suffer at the end of their lives because they get. Plus, we know that, you know, for they had a life after life, you know, after death they suffer. So it's for mostly for the men. So they get the pills, they keep doing the action, and they keep treating it, not knowing that they don't know how to what dosage they should take. You know, so even that's an illusion. But this is mostly for the men. That's horrible, man. Yeah,
Wow. There's
yeah,
cheating all over the place here.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Premananda, you want to go on reading?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:30-29. Lord Kapila continued, My dear mother, it is sometimes said that we experience hell or heaven on this planet. For hellish punishments are sometimes visible on this planet also. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes unbelievers do not accept these statements of scripture regarding hell. They disregard such authorized descriptions. Lord Kapila therefore confirms them by saying that these hellish conditions are also visible on this planet. It is not that they are only on the planet where Yamaraj lives. On the planet of Yamaraj, the sinful man is given the chance to practice living in the hellish conditions, which he will have to endure in the next life. And then he is given the chance to take birth on another planet to continue his hellish life. For example, if a man is to be punished to remain in hell and eat stool and urine, then first of all, he practices such habits on the planet of Yamaraj. And then he is given a particular type of body, that of a hawk, so that he can eat stool and think that he is enjoying life. It is stated previously that in any hellish condition, that conditioned soul thinks he is happy. Otherwise, it would not be possible for him to suffer hellish life.
Good. Okay, what do you think about that, Premanandaji?
Well, about the statement that we suffer this hellish condition statement in this world, I think it's quite true because we see so many people suffering. There are people who live in slums. They don't have any good sanitation or water. There's so much of suffering, misery. So I think you can see that the only thing is that when you go to the abode of Yamaraj or those hellish planets, I think the magnitude of suffering increases, I think, millions and trillions of times. And while I've been reading all this and studying this, I've also kind of realized that I'm sure I may have also gone through all these punishments in the past life. And why do I keep forgetting this? Why doesn't Krishna sometimes give me all this hellish experiences? I mean, or some kind of dreams so that we remember what you went through. I think forgetfulness is good, but sometimes a little bit of memory would really make us more focused in bhakti.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
dreadful.
so it's very, very scary, very scary.
Very scary, you know. Even on this planet, we've seen enormous torture between human beings. I was telling my husband, I don't want to get into a discussion of the tortures that we have seen occur on this planet. You know, sometimes you're right. We see that this is happening. We have to get out of here and bring as many souls as possible. And Prabhupada was so kind to give us this knowledge so that we could leave. And we see it is happening on this planet, like the Holocaust and so many different, anyway, let's go on.
And it's going to get worse in Kali Yuga.
Yes, it's going to get yours out of here as soon as possible.
Right.
As soon as possible. We have no time to waste. This is urgency. When I first became a devotee, we would speak about the urgency, emergency devotional service, the urgency of getting ourselves out and running in the street and telling everyone, you know, this is not a good place. You know, there's an urgency that we have to, you know, think, oh, be peaceful and nice, but there is an urgency to get out because down the road we see it's not very nice.
Right.
Thank you. Premana. Okay. Chata, would you like to read Chatamai?
Haribol. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mataji. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 30, verse 30 through 32. After leaving this body, the man who maintained himself and his family members by sinful activities suffers a hellish life, and his relatives suffer also. He goes alone to the darkest regions of hell after quitting the present body, and the money he acquired by envying other living entities is the passage money with which he leaves this world.
Wow.
Thus, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maintainer of kinsmen is put into a hellish condition to suffer his sinful activities, like a man who has lost his wealth. Purport. The result of material enjoyment is that one takes with him the sinful reaction only, and not the money. The money he earned is left in this world, and he takes only the reaction. If a person acquires some money by murdering someone, the family is not hanged, although its members are sinfully contaminated. But the man who commits the murder and maintains his family is himself hanged as a murderer. The direct offender is more responsible for sinful activities than the direct enjoyer. It is especially mentioned herein that by superior arrangement, daivan na saditam, although the man leaves behind him his sinfully earned money, he carries the effect of it. When a man steals some money, if he is caught and agrees to return it, he is not freed from the criminal punishment. By the law of the state, even though he returns the money, he has to undergo the punishment. Similarly, the money earned by a criminal process may be left by the man when dying. But by superior arrangement, he carries with him the effect, and therefore he has to suffer hellish life.
So what do you think about this? The maintainer, this is the Bhagavatam is talking about the maintainer of the family. Hare Krishna. Chacha,
Yeah.
what do you think about this?
This obviously desperation that one would do such a thing as murder someone, or any kind of dirty money that needs to be accumulated. I mean, I feel for people who are heads of households and some seem to have no choice. At least that's their perception. And that is that's a covering, right? That's a covering of Maya, that we have to do desperate things in order to maintain a living. And here it's put forth that there's a reaction. There's no way, there's no free lunch. If you commit a crime, you're going to be punished, whether in this life by the law system or in a subsequent situation, a subsequent body, or in between bodies. There's going to be some reaction to it. It's pretty scary.
Let me ask you a question. How is it justified that I will kill your child to feed my child? I mean,
Oof.
that seems to be the mentality of a
Yes. Oh, it's there. It's very pervasive, and this is what also facilitates people to freely have abortions. Because if I want to have a good life, then I don't want to have this baby in my life. So, hey, it's all about me, and the cultural illusions just put this idea forward, so that women are very happy to have abortions so that they can have their so-called happy life. But there is a price to pay. There is a price to pay. And what these descriptions also bring to mind is how indebted we are to our spiritual masters. At the time of Diksha, the fire ceremony is there, and all of our sins go into the fire by the mercy of the spiritual master, he or she takes on our spiritual, our karmas, and the whole thing is just dissolved for us. What an unbelievable gift the spiritual master is giving us.
But there's one thing that we have to remember at the end of that. Don't do it again.
Yeah,
Don't do it again.
right.
Because you can't abuse a devotee of Krishna. You can't abuse the spiritual master. These are very heavy, graphic things that, you know, sometimes it's absolutely necessary to hear, or it wouldn't be in the Bhagavatam.
In your explanation, Tata, you mentioned cultural beliefs or cultural. That jumped out at me because especially Hollywood with the gangster movies and the murders and so much violence in the present day. Children are being brought up seeing that as glorified and normal and natural. Then what is the obvious result of that in the culture as they grow to be adults? That it becomes commonplace, and we see that it's becoming more and more common to commit violent crimes and get away with it because of the cultural ignorance.
Right.
Here
It is,
is-
like you said, it is glamorization of it. And people just believe it because they have no other source of information than movies.
Horrible. The heroes are gangsters or football players, or all the sutras are. This is not the time for glorification of the pure devotees and the Brahmins, but somehow or another, we're here. Lord Chaitanya's movement is here. So we have to reinstate this. Hare Krishna.
Wow. We are
All
so
right.
fortunate. Hari Bol.
We are fortunate, definitely. Okay, let's go on with this. Oh God, Hemavati, this one's
Hare-
for you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh my God.
All right. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:30-33. Therefore, a person who is very eager to maintain his family and kinsman simply by black method certainly goes to the darkness region of hell, which is known as Anda Tamisra. Purport. These words, pardon me, in this verse are very significant. Kevalina means only by black method, means unrighteous or irreligious,
Righteousness.
unrighteousness and irreligious, and kutumba barana means family maintenance. One should work honestly according to his qualification. He should not earn his livelihood means for which he is not qualified. If a Brahmana who works as a priest so that he, pardon me, so that I have to put it very large so I can read, so I can see the whole sentence at one. Brahmana who works as a priest so that he may enlighten his followers with the spiritual way of life is not qualified as a priest, then he is cheating the public. One should not earn by such unfair means. The same is applicable to Kshatriyas or to Vaishyas. It is especially mentioned that the means of livelihood of those who are trying to advance in Krishna consciousness must be very fair and uncomplicated. There it is mentioned that he who earns his livelihood by unfair means, Kevalina, is sent to the darkness hellish region. Otherwise, if one maintained his family by prescribed method and honest means, there is no objection of one's being a family man.
Oh, boy. Well, that's clear. You have anything to add to that, Himavati?
I was listening this morning to a class of, I forgot his name. Anyway, a very beautiful class, and he was saying that people would criticize sometimes religions because they say that religion brings us to war and segregation and rape of children and things like that. And in the class, he said that actually it is not the religion that does that, but the people who misuse the religion for their own sake, for their own self-gratification. So that makes me think of that because sometimes people will take any means to accomplish their evil plans, even religious practice.
Yeah, we have to be careful.
Yeah.
Good.
So
We have to be careful. Go on.
but
Yeah.
we are lucky also because Sri Prabhupada gave us the way that we can actually be in family life and know how to, what are the nice ways of performing
Right.
family life without getting these bad reactions.
Good for you. That's true. And we're very fortunate to have that. Srila Prabhupada has given us the way of life, to avoid this horrible future that is there for those who don't pay attention to this knowledge. Thank you, Himavati. That's very beautiful. Okay, so this is the last verse. Manvantara, would you like to complete this chapter? And maybe you'll read the next verse in the next chapter.
Text 34. Having gone through all the miserable hellish conditions, and having passed in a regular order through the lowest forms of animal life prior to human birth, and having thus been purged of his sins, one is reborn again as a human being on this earth. Purport. Just as a prisoner who has undergone troublesome prison life is set free again, the person who has always engaged in impious and mischievous activities is put into hellish conditions, and when he has undergone different hellish lives, namely those of lower animals like cats, dogs, and hogs, by the gradual process of evolution, he again comes back as a human being. If someone is not willing to enter into hellish life, as in Tamishra or Anatamishra, he must take to the process of Krishna consciousness, which is the first class yoga system, because even if one is unable to attain complete Krishna consciousness in this life, he is guaranteed at least to take his next birth in a human family. He cannot be sent into a hellish condition. Krishna consciousness is the purest life, and it protects all human beings from gliding down to hell to take birth in a family of dogs or hogs. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 30th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Description by Lord Kapila of Adverse Fruitive Activities.
Oof. You have something to comment on that here? Oh my goodness. What about this? Hati, you want to speak about this before Manvantara gives
Well, it's
her?
just showing what she read, how when we see these paintings, sometimes we just think, oh, reincarnation, but now hearing the details of how the sinful person in a human form of life actually becomes degraded back down into animal life, and depending on how sinful he was and what the reactions are, placed in an animal body or lower. And once they're in the animal species, then there's no real karma There's just the actions and reactions of material nature, which bring one again through evolution up to, again, the human form of life. And it's described that the person comes back in a very similar, almost the exact same circumstances as the circumstances in which he became degraded. In other words, just like the example of the prisoner. Did you learn your lesson? Now we'll set you free and put you back in the same circumstances and see if you again commit those same things. We have to learn our lessons is the lesson.
Wow. It's very, very intense chapter. And we are very grateful for this. Okay, Mama Tara, why don't you read the next verse here? And after you read this, the title.
Chapter 31. Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities.
Read.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, Text 1. The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. Purport. As stated in the last chapter, after suffering different kinds of hellish conditions, a man comes again to the human form of body. The same topic is continued in this chapter. In order to give a particular type of human form to a person who has already suffered hellish life, the soul is transferred to the semen of a man who is just suitable to become his father. During sexual intercourse, the soul is transferred through the semen of the father into the mother's womb in order to produce a particular type of body. This process is applicable to all embodied living entities, but it is especially mentioned for the man who has transferred the Anda Tamishra hell. After suffering there, when he who has had many types of hellish bodies, like those of dogs and hogs, is to come again to the human form, he's given the chance to take his birth in the same type of body from which he degraded himself to hell.
Oh, yikes. Okay, what's your realization of this, Mama Tara?
Yikes is right. But, you have to say it's not worth it. Once you know, just like Devahuti's inquiry to Lord Kapila Dev, once you know that this is happening, you're less inclined to want to enjoy because of, you don't perceive the results of your actions because you're under the illusion that this is your only life. And that's really ridiculous. And so you disregard the reality of the suffering. It's not worth it.
Not worth it. It is not worth it. For sure, it's not worth it. I heard my father say that on his deathbed. He had some heart surgery, and he said to me, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to try to satisfy a little, as Prabhupada said, paltry sense gratification. It's not worth it. Okay, but now we're going to have, oh boy, here we go. Okay, next reader. Thank you, Mama Tar. Madhurya Leela, would you be able to read? Madhurya? Madhurya, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't read, but I just had a quick comment that which I forgot now. Let's see.
Okay. Why don't you try to
It's
read?
in relation to what? No, I can't read. I'm in the middle of puja.
Oh dear. Okay, don't read. Okay. Well, when you think of it, let us know. Okay. Okay. Next is Sham Govinda.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31, text 2 and 4. I guess I'll come back to the illustration. On the first night, the sperm and ovum mix, and on the fifth night, the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th night, it develops into a form like a plum, and after that, it gradually turns into a lump of flesh or an egg, as the case may be. Report. In the course of a month, the head is formed. At the end of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body, hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ of generation and the other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. Within 4 months from the date of conception, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely chyle, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt, and at the end of 6 months, the fetus, enclosed by the amnion, begins to move on the right side of the abdomen.
Now
Those were all verses. You want him to read the purport too,
Yeah.
Priya?
Yeah, read the purport.
Oh, sorry. The body of the soul develops in 4 different ways according to its different sources. One kind of body, that of the trees and plants, sprouts from the earth. The second kind of body grows from perspiration, as with flies, germs, and bugs. The third kind of body develops from eggs, and the fourth develops from an embryo. This verse indicates that after emulsification of the ovum and sperm, the body gradually develops either into a lump of flesh or into an egg, as the case may be. In the case of birds, it develops into an egg. In the case of animals and human beings, it develops into a lump of flesh. When the body of the child is completely formed at the end of 6 months, the child, if he is male, begins to move on the right side, and if female, she tries to move on the left side.
Okay. So why don't we go back to the verses so that you can explain that and give your analysis on this verse.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the human embryonic and fetal development. So first of all, it's like, when I was reading, it's a brilliant science. We saw the illustration before of how the soul's passing through the human body and then passing through the different facets of animal bodies according to one's consciousness and sinful activities. But it's a brilliant, precise system. I don't know if anyone has ever seen The Matrix, but it's also intricately designed. You move one way, just like on a chessboard, then another piece can just automatically come and take you. So just the intricacies of it come to mind. Could I just see the verse again, kindly? I guess the Krishna conscious thing that saves the kind of misery of seeing repeated birth and death take place by this development that we're seeing and hearing about is that one can either be born into a Krishna conscious family, or just like Mother Chatamayi was saying, we can be born in a sinful family like myself. I mean, my parents didn't have any knowledge of Krishna consciousness, but through the mercy of the spiritual master, or a pure devotee, we can come to this knowledge, and we can at least have the choice. Because it seems to me, I guess this is a topic for discussion, but a lot of people are innocent. I mean, they're doing sinful activities, but they don't know that they're doing it. And so that's up to inform them.
Good. Yeah. What do you think about that, Pati?
Very true. I'm thinking how it's almost comical. It's mind blowing how people think that this is just going on by nature, that there's no soul, that there's no one in control, and just these elements of material body because of two secretions from a body, the ovum and the sperm. All of a sudden, this manifestation of life begins to manifest, an actual heart and kidneys and all kinds of internal organs, and a body that can move with intelligence. And they just think it's astounding that I was brought up with that. And although I believed it, it didn't sit well. And when I finally heard the Krishna conscious answer to it, and perception of what it is, It was like everything I'd learned was like dominoes. You press one and the whole line of them go down. So all the information that I'd been given really didn't make very much sense. I didn't know if there was or there wasn't, how it was happening or whatever. But once you learn these things, then, I mean, they have the material science down. This is exactly as it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. You see the fertilized egg, the 2-cell, the 4-cell, the 8-cell, it grows through the months. The same system is there. They just don't know why. And they don't know what's causing it. They don't know that the soul is in the body due to its past activities. And here we have the Lord himself, Lord Kapila Dev, explaining it to his mother, and we're hearing it directly through Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara, and we're so blessed to have this information.
Wow. I think that's the word of the day, that we're, after reading this whole thing, we're all feeling pretty blessed. Chata, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just this, it's bringing to mind the verse 435 from the Gita, which says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion.
Yay. How fortunate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yay is right. Thank you. Madhurya, you wanted to say something?
I remembered what I was going to say about that
Okay.
last verse about talking about the animals and the lower species, etc. So it's really important for us to give them prasadam, chant out loud when we're going out. Even the vegetation can benefit. Everybody can benefit from that. And if they get prasadam, they can go directly to the human birth.
All right.
Yeah, very good. Hemavati, thank you, Madhurya ji. Hemavati, did you want to say something?
Yes. Do you hear me now?
Yes?
Yeah, okay. Also, what is so amazing is that they really think that the fetus is enjoying. It's not suffering. They have this illusion that is very nice place and that there is nothing wrong going on. They don't know that it's been bitten by insects and worms and suffering actually hell, and they want to get out of there.
Right. Oh my God. Thank you for that reminder. Thank you. All right, let's go on. Premanandaji, would you like to read this?
Yes, Hare Krishna. Which one is it? Oh, 5, okay.
This is
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-5. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abominable residence of stools and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Markandeya Purana, it is said that in the intestine of the mother, the umbilical cord, which is known as Apyayani, joins the mother to the abdomen of the child. And through this passage, the child within the womb accepts the mother's assimilated foodstuff. In this way, the child is fed by the mother's intestine within the womb and grows from day to day. The statement of the Markandeya Purana about the child's situation within the womb is exactly corroborated by modern medical science, and thus the authority of the Puranas cannot be disproved, as is sometimes attempted by the Mayavadi philosophers. Since the child depends completely on the assimilated foodstuff of the mother during pregnancy, there are restrictions on the food taken by the mother. Too much salt, chili, onion, and similar food is forbidden for the pregnant mother because the child's body is too delicate and new for him to tolerate such pungent food. Restrictions and precautions to be taken by the pregnant mother, as enunciated in the Smriti scriptures of Vedic literature, are very useful. We can understand from the Vedic literature how much care is taken to beget a nice child in society. The Garbhadhana ceremony before sexual intercourse was compulsory for persons in the higher grades of society, and it is very scientific. Other processes recommended in the Vedic literature during pregnancy are also very important. To take care of the child is the primary duty of the parents, because if such care is taken, society will be filled with good population to maintain the peace and prosperity of the society, country, and human race.
okay. Well, that sounds like a good solution. What is your realization about this?
Well, what can I say? I mean, there are so many people who are so ignorant of this basic principle as to what the child goes through in the womb of the mother. We have heard a lot, we see a lot, mothers, even when they are pregnant, they take drugs, they drink, and then they have such a disturbed child when the child is born. So yeah, so this knowledge really needs to go out, and I think the modern science, and they are not doing a good job of really telling what's going on inside the womb of the mother.
Oh God! Oh God! All right.
I mean, there are so many like really educated. I've seen educated women, even in India, like they're so proudly, even they're pregnant, but still they're like they said it's a high class. No, they are drinking wine and whatever, enjoying. They say, oh, this is perfectly okay. The child is okay. I'm drinking. The child is not drinking. I mean, even you are educated, more like still, I mean, you don't know like that the child is being fed through you. I mean, it's so ridiculous
Oh,
to think
boy.
of all this.
Ridiculous! It's really
Yeah,
all right. It's quite a plight.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go on with Ian. Would you like to read this, Ian?
Okay. That's 79, text 79. Okay. So, owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs, or food which is too salty or too sour, the body of the child incessantly suffers pains which are almost intolerable. Placed within the amnion and covered outside with the intestines, the child remains lying on one side of the abdomen, his head turned towards his belly, and his back and neck rather, arch like a bow. A child thus remains just like a bird in a cage, without the freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births. Wow. And he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Poor.
Keep going. Read it.
How description of the child's bodily situation of the mother are beyond our conception. It is very difficult to remain in such a position, but still the child has to remain, because his consciousness is not very developed. The child can tolerate it. Otherwise, he would die. That is the benediction of Maya, who endows the suffering body with the qualifications for tolerating such terrible tortures. If a grown man were put in such a condition as a child within the abdomen, completely entangled in all respects, it would be impossible for him to live even for a few seconds. Wow. Unfortunately, we forget all these sufferings and try to be happy in this life, not caring for the liberation of the soul from the entanglement of birth and death. It is an unfortunate civilization in which these matters are not plainly discussed to make people understand the precarious condition of material existence. One who does not take heed of these indications of suffering in human existence is said to be undoubtedly committing suicide. It is said that this human form of life is the only means for crossing over the nascence of Maya or material existence. We have a very efficient boat in this human form of body, and there is a very expert captain, the spiritual master. The scriptural injunctions are like February winds. If we do not cross over the ocean of the nascence of material existence in spite of all these facilities, then certainly we are all intentionally committing suicide. Oh, that's the crux of the matter. Wow.
Wow. Okay. So what is your realization of all these?
Yeah, very interesting. It says that if a grown man was put into the condition of a baby, then he would live for only a few seconds. Looking at those 10 months or so, that different position they are saying. If a grown man, when I read that, I said, "What really? There's really something to meditate on, that a grown man could not live for a few seconds." Yeah.
That affected you.
That, yeah, yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah.
But did you-
Krishna.
this section of the Bhagavatam is extremely descriptive and very, very intense for devotees to hear, I think, because we don't like to see the suffering of anyone. Pati, did you want to add something to this?
Yes. Thank you. The last three meditations for the forums and meditations, Lord Kapila Dev previously explained in the descriptions of how material nature works, the two mechanics of Prakshipatmika and Avaranatmika, how we're forced into a particular circumstance, and then covered, Avaranatmika, to accept that as a pleasurable or acceptable circumstance. And here it says, that is the benediction of Maya, who endows a suffering body with the qualifications for tolerating such terrible tortures. We're constantly, this is our life, constantly put into this situation where we're forced into a circumstance, and then somehow or another we have to adapt, and then we accept that adaptation as pleasurable. This is the nature of this material world. So I just wanted to show that it was very purposeful that I used several different meditations through the different lessons that Lord Kapila Dev's teachings to focus on those particular mechanics of material nature, because if we understand them clearly, then it makes us less inclined to just submit to this illusory adaptation of being okay. We're not
Wow.
okay.
What a trick of Maya. The benediction of Maya, who endows the suffering body with the qualifications to tolerate such terrible tortures. Whoa. And then you think, I can do that. It's not that bad. This is the power of the God. Unbelievable. Oh, thank you. Okay, let's go on. Chetta, you want to read? Chetta?
Yes, Mata, thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-10. Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity, he cannot remain in one place. Purport. At the end of the 7th month, the child is moved by the bodily air and does not remain in the same place, for the entire uterine system becomes slackened before delivery. The worms have been described here as Sodar. Sodara means born of the same mother. Since the child is born from the same womb of the mother, and the worms are also born of fermentation within the womb of the same mother, under the circumstances, the child and the worms are actually brothers. We are very anxious to establish universal brotherhood among human beings. I know, this is amazing. But we should take into consideration that even the worms are our brothers, what to speak of other living entities. Therefore, we should be concerned about all living entities. Wow. It's amazing how Srila Prabhupada brings this into the picture. It's not even part of, when I was reading this chapter, it's not even part of my consciousness that this is, we're thinking we're going through this alone. But here Prabhupada is emphasizing, guess what? Everybody else is going through it as well, even the worms. So it's like in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it mentions the Sattvic view of knowledge. It's that which sees the same equality in all living entities. Whereas the Rajasic view is that we're all a little bit different, there's distinctions. But here he's bringing to mind, guess what? We're all children of the same father, even the worms.
And there are differences, though. That's a whole other topic. We are different, but we are also all children and made of the same stuff.
I want to take this opportunity to thank you for posting your video on that Equal Vision.
Oh, yeah,
That was beautiful.
that was beautiful. Thank you.
Jaguar
Okay. Do you want to read the next slide, Tata?
Sure.
Because we're headed to the there. Why don't you just read that one? This is really nice.
Okay.
Interesting.
Bhagavatam 3, 31, 11, and 12. Oh, a prayer from a womb. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers and material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all fear. And from him, I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. That phrase jumps out at me, which is just befitting my impious activities. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the hellish condition within the womb, the living entity is very much afraid of being born again. But when he is out of the womb, when he is in full life and in good health, he forgets everything and commits again and again the same sins for which he was put into that horrible condition of existence. Lord Ramachandra actually walked on the surface of the world, and Lord Krishna also walked just like an ordinary man. The prayer is therefore offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who descends to the surface of this earth, or any part of this universe, for the protection of the pious and the destruction of the impious. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that when there is an increase of irreligion and discrepancies arise in real religious activities, the Supreme Lord comes to protect the pious and kill the impious. This verse indicates Lord Krishna. As the Supreme Lord puts the living entity into the condition of horrible existence, he can also deliver him. And therefore one should seek shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna demands, give up everything and surrender unto me. And it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who approaches him does not come back again to accept a form in material existence, but goes back to Godhead, back to home, never to return.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's some prayer.
Yes, yes, it's immediate. Lord Kapila Dev is saying, I know this is excruciating what you're going through, meditating on all of this, but I just want to remind you again that there is a way out, and even the fetus itself has the awareness that there is some means to free ourselves, to bring us back to normalcy.
Well, you know, you question whether it's the fetus's capacity or his piety that Krishna allows him to pray.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so those are the things.
Two wings, our own efforts and Krishna's mercy. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Ian, did you have something to say?
Yes, quickly. Yes, 2 things. I was told that I was born at 7 months. So 7 months seemed to be a time that you could be born at 7 months. I was told that I was born at 7 months.
7 months. Oh, good
Yes,
for you.
yes.
You have to suffer that long.
It's called premature, but yes, you can.
Yes, premature. Yes, but it's very interesting too that the fetus is prone to the earth. You know, just give me a break and I'll behave myself when I get out. But as soon as we get out and all this, what a nice baby, and we've been waiting for so long and all those things, then we forget it and we live for 100 years, we engage in all kind of sinful activities, and we get in the cycle of birth and death again. So, wow. So that's far out. Yeah, the 7 months and forgetting that we did ask the Lord to help us to behave ourselves, but we got covered again and back in the cycle of birth and death. So that's
Well, here
important.
we
But
are,
7
not
months,
getting covered.
yeah,
No more
Yeah.
covering. We have the
Yeah.
method out. This is how we get it out, by sadhusanga, reading the Bhagavatam, and
Yeah.
chanting Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, let's go on now. And thank you, Chaitanya, for your explanation and realizations. And Hemavati, would you like to read this? And then we'll have one more slide left. And Sham Govinda, if you would like to read that one.
Yes.
I
Can you
think
hear
it
me
was,
now? Yes. Can
Yeah.
you hear me?
Yes. What's up, Ian? Did you want to say something
yes,
else?
I was saying there was another hand up.
Huh?
There was another person's hand.
Yeah, well, that's Hemavati that she's going to read. I think she forgot to put her hand down. Did you have
Yeah,
a
I
question
don't-
also?
I don't know how to undo
Oh, she didn't
it.
know. Thank you, Ian, for that observation. But I had a feeling she didn't know what to do. But she's
Yeah.
reading now. Thank you, Dawn.
Okay. You can
Okay.
hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
perfectly.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-13. I, the pure soul, appearing now, bound by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and challengeless.
Changeless.
Changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances. Purport. As stated in the previous verse, the Jiva soul says, I take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, constitutionally, the Jiva soul is the subordinate servitor of the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead. Both the Supreme Soul and the Jiva souls are sitting in the same body, as confirmed in the Upanishad. They are sitting as friends, but one is suffering and the other one is aloof from suffering. The individual soul becomes repentant that he forgets his constitutional position, wanted to become one with the Supreme Soul, and tried his best to load it over material nature. He has been baffled, and therefore he is he has been baffled, and then therefore he is repentant. At that time, super soul, or the relationship between the super soul and the individual soul, is realized. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, after many, many births, the knowledge comes to the conditioned soul that Vasudeva is great, he is the master, and he is the Lord. The individual soul is the servant, and therefore he surrenders unto him. At that time, he becomes a Mahatma, a great soul. Therefore, a fortunate living being who comes to this understanding, even, sorry, I have something in the way that is,
okay.
Even within the womb is of the mother, has his liberation assured.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes, that's very incredible. Liberation is assured. Only how? How? Anyone say? How is liberation assured?
If we repent.
Repentant heart.
Yeah,
Repentant heart.
devotional service.
Yes, and you, in order to perform the devotional service, you have to be humble and have to have a repentant heart. That's a real signal how to avoid hell. Cheta?
This verse is saying that self-realization is possible in utero.
It's all the blessings of Krishna.
We'll
It's the
find
blessings
out.
of Krishna.
We'll find out later when the baby
Okay.
actually goes through the birth canal that the suffering is so terrible he forgets.
Must.
Thank you.
Unless you're Sukadev Goswami, then you stay in the womb for 16 years waiting for the benediction of Krishna.
Let's do this again, everybody. This is not where we want to be. Okay. This is, I've never felt this way in conducting any kind of Bhagavatam reading ever. That this one, whoa, this is so intense. Sean, why don't you end this up for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to say before I start, when I was listening to these in my car driving, I wasn't so affected, like in other words, I wasn't hearing, like really hearing, but now I'm like petrified. So
Good, it worked. I think Lord Kapila Dev is wanting to petrify us all. So that's impetus. My husband was saying before, this is impetus for us to get out of here. Go on.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-14. I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused. Although I am essentially spiritual, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to material nature and the living entities, because he is devoid of such a material body, and because he is always glorious in his spiritual qualities, I offer my obeisances unto him. Purport. Since the identity of the living entity is very minute, he is prone to be subjected to material nature. But when he is freed from this material body, which is false, he attains the same spiritual nature as the Supreme Lord. At that time, there is no qualitative difference between him and the Supreme Lord. But because he is not so quantitatively powerful as to never be put under the influence of material nature, he is quantitatively different from the Lord. The entire process of devotional service is to purify oneself of this contamination of material nature and put oneself on the spiritual platform where he is qualitatively one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedas, it is said that the living entity is always free. Asango yam purusaha. The living entity is liberated. His material contamination is temporary, and his actual position is that he is liberated. This liberation is achieved by Krishna consciousness, which begins from the point of surrender. Therefore, it is said here, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Person.
Okay, what's your realization, Sean?
I mean, basically that we're part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and that's why we're so easily covered over by the material energy. But if I put my realization from the whole call into this last verse also, the material nature is like, it's like one doesn't want to make a mistake, right? Because there's a consequence for every mistake. And so I guess it's a question, how it's because we're so easily covered over, even as devotees, how do we bring together that one is going to make a mistake in devotional service, one may make an offense, one may fall down, and there's going to be reactions for that. But how do we, because we're so easily covered, how do we accept making mistakes and continue? I guess this is where repentance comes in.
Good,
in our devotional service.
good. Very good. That's exactly. Ian, did you want to, it looks like you want to partake in this. Very, very excellent realization. Go on, Ian.
Just a quick comment on the quality of the prayer. You would say, if one is in the room and if you look at the contents, how the requests are put together, you're saying, wow.
Speak slower. Ian, wait.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Clear. You get
I'm
very
a fast-
excited and enthusiastic.
Yes.
You have to speak slower so we can understand what you're saying.
It's one of my weaknesses. I talk very fast, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
So I'm saying, I'm looking at the quality of the prayer. The words are put together, the requests are put together, and I'm saying in the room, in that condition, or the quality of the prayer, how the words are put together. I'm saying, wow, the contents, very, very powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
We have to somehow or another. We are, I don't know, born again, but we don't even get born again. But in a sense, when we come in contact with this knowledge, we're born, really born. We become self-realized. Okay? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Does anyone else have something to add to this, very amazing section of the Bhagavatam that actually can, if this is not impetus to get out of the material world, I don't know what's next. I mean, really, this is sometimes you want to enthuse someone by fear. Sometimes we use fear. This is the Lord using fear. Hare Krishna. What's Premanandaji?
No, I was just about to say that the fear tactic, Srimad Bhagavatam tries various ways to make us take devotional service. Sometimes it inspires us by positive pastimes, and if it doesn't work, then it uses these scary tactics, take it up, take Krishna consciousness.
That's right. That's what Ian was saying that before, weren't you, Ian? When we asked how the answer is devotional service. It is, no matter what. The answer is devotional service.
So you have been a Sankirtan devotee. Have you ever tried this as fearful tactics to sell books or distribute books?
I'll tell you one time I was distributing a book in Los Angeles airport, this maybe 30 years ago. And I said, "Sir, you are going to die. Please take this book." And he got terrified. He said, "You said the death word. You said death to me." And he was going to call a cop because I said death. He was like, people are very like that. You have to be very sensitive. That's the art of book distribution or preaching in any way. You have to know how to deliver the line so that people will say, "Oh, right," and take a book. People are freaked out anyway. They're terrified about in this world.
Okay.
I just wanted to correct something I said. The fifth canto is about creation, not the hellish planets, and that's when, after reading that some devotees couldn't accept it and left.
Oh,
So that was fine.
well, that's not the reason. The reason
Well, of
is
course,
that
there's
they're
always-
not ready to surrender to Krishna. They don't have a repentant
yeah.
heart. The heart that you think, because we in this material world, in this Western civilization, from birth things are put in our head, and then you hear Prabhupada say, "We didn't go to the moon." What? This is like, it's hard to, takes a few lifetimes. But all of us here, we've had enough lifetimes in this material world. We're ready to go, and we have repentant hearts, and we have to help each other and pray for each other because I'm seeing now every week one of my god brothers or god sisters is leaving. Another devotee who I knew from Los Angeles many years ago, he just left. So there's no time to waste. This is we have to be enthusiastic to have a repentant heart. Okay. Anyone else? Pati, did you want to say something before we leave?
Yes. Regarding Shyam Govinda's sentiments, there's a nice explanation here about making mistakes, being small, being covered by material energy. Krishna says to Arjuna, Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Hesha Gunamai. Daivi means my energy, transcendental energy. This is my energy. Daivi Hesha Gunamai. Mama Maya Dharatyaya. It's very difficult to overcome. Mameva ye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Just a short part of the purport. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the ropes of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. He must be helped by a person who is unbound. Because the bound cannot help the bound, the rescuer must be liberated. Therefore, only Lord Krishna, or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. Devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. Krishna, being the Lord of the illusory energy, can order this insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. His orders to release out of his, he orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul and out of his paternal affection for the living entity who was originally a beloved son of the Lord. Therefore, surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord is the only means to get freed from the clutches of the stringent material nature. And Krishna is kind, he's benevolent, he's understanding. If we approach with a repentant sincerity, then mistakes are overlooked.
Good.
Don't
Yeah.
have to get so caught up in negativity.
Yeah, repentant heart.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. So now we will cultivate a repentant heart, chant Hare Krishna, and be happy in total dependence on the Supreme Lord.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks for this association. Have a good week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Right.
Thank you.